Hello and welcome to another Tank Encyclopedia voiced article. I'm your host Tony, and today I'll be covering the operational use of the Carro Armato M1542. If you like our videos and want to support us, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be used to improve future Tank Encyclopedia content. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Operational use: Regio Esercito. The Regio Esercito received about 100 M42s by September 1943. However, the army was never able to use these vehicles except during the clashes against the Germans between September 8th and 11th, 1943. In Sicily and southern Italy, the M1542 was never sent to fight the Allied troops. 85 M42s were assigned to the 135th Divisione Corazzata Ariete Secondo, or 135th Armored Division Ariete II, together with 12 M42 Centro Radio, 164 other tanks and self-propelled guns, and 80 AP-41 armored cars and AS-42 and AS-43 trucks. This unit was formed in July 1943 and was part of the Corpo di Armata Motocorazzato, or Armored Motor Corps. It was stationed in Rome. After the fall of Benito Mussolini on July 25, 1943, at the behest of the King of Italy Vittorio Emanuele II, the Italian Marshal Pietro Badoglio was brought in to command the army. He continued the war on the side of the German allies, but secretly tried to make contact with Allied powers to surrender. The proclamation of the surrender was made by Pietro Badoglio on Radio Algiers at 7:45 p.m. on September 8, 1943, catching the Italian troops unprepared as they did not expect the surrender. The Germans were, however, not unprepared for the Italian defection. They had already prepared Falachse, Operation Axis. Already by 10 p.m., the 2nd Fallschirmjäger Division Ramke attacked the airport of Patrica di Mare, which was 30 kilometers south of Rome. During the morning of September 9th, German units repeatedly attacked a stronghold of the 135th Divisione Corazzata. This position resisted throughout the day, losing 4 tanks and 20 soldiers. The men of the 2nd Fallschirmjäger Division succeeded in forcing the Italian troops to retreat inside the city on September 9th and restarted the attack on September 10th. The 21st Divisione Fanteria had established itself at Porta San Paolo, part of the ancient Roman walls, together with some groups of Allivieri Carabinieri and other units of the Royal Army. In the fight for the Porta San Paolo and the defense of the nearby Forte Ostiense, some M-series tanks of the 135th Divisione Corazzata were damaged or destroyed by German troops. The numbers and the exact models of the vehicles are unknown. It can only be assumed that there were some M1542 among them. During the clashes of Porta San Paolo, a Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger hit an M tank of unknown model. At 1600 p.m. on September 10, 1943, the Italian command proclaimed Rome an open city, even if some Italian units fought until the evening. Most of the Italian soldiers surrendered to the Germans, while others, along with civilians, fled from the city to form the first partisan nuclei. In the battle for Rome, 1,167 Italians died, of which between 200 and 400 were civilians. 597 Italians fell at Porta San Paolo, of which 414 military and 183 civilians. In addition to Rome, the Regio Esercito defended itself also in Piombino, a Tuscan seaside town, where the Germans had landed on September 9th to occupy the city. The 19th Battaglione of the 31st Regimento Caristi, or 19th Battalion of the 31st Caristi Regiment, equipped with 20 tanks of the M-series, among which probably some M1542 and 18 M42 self-propelled guns, contained the German troops until September 11th with heavy losses. Esercito Nazionale Repubblicano. After the armistice, the Falachse operation, which lasted until September 19, 1943, resulted in the killing of between 20,000 and 30,000 and the capture of just over 1 million Italian soldiers. A small part of Italian soldiers immediately sided with the Germans, but were deprived of their armored vehicles. The majority of the Italian soldiers were captured and placed in prison or concentration camps until September 23, 1943. When Benito Mussolini returned to Italy after his release, he founded the Repubblica Sociale Italiana, or RSI, Italian Social Republic, in Salo, in the province of Brescia. Many Italian soldiers loyal to Mussolini and fascism adhered to the new republic, joining the new Esercito Nazionale Repubblicano, or ENR, National Republican Army. The Gruppo Corazzato Leoncello, Armored Group Leoncello, was established in September 1943 with the aim of defending the Ministry of the Armed Forces in Polpenazze de Garda, in province of Brescia. At the end of 1944, it received 5 tanks of the M series from the 27th Deposito Misto Provinciale, or 27th Provincial Mixed Depot of Verona. 4 M1340s and 1 M1542s were used only in training and exercises until April 1945. Guardia Nazionale Repubblicana. For the Guardia Nazionale Repubblicana, or GNR, Republican National Guard, the situation was more drastic. As the ENR, some soldiers in prison camps swore allegiance to Mussolini and Nazi Germany, and those who did not join the Esercito Nazionale Repubblicano joined the GNR, but only the Gruppo Corazzato Leonessa, Armored Group Leonessa, not to be confused with Leoncello, was able to recover some M-series tanks. Some were recovered from Lombardy, Piedmont, and Emilia-Romagna. According to some German documents, about 30 M tanks were recovered from a unit in Milan before being dismantled. Of these 30 or so tanks recovered in Milan, at least 5 were put back into service, while the others were used for spare parts. In total, the Gruppo Corazzato Leonessa had 33 tanks of the M series, of which only a small number were M1542s and 2 M42 command tanks. There is only one record about the M1542 of the Gruppo Corazzato Leonessa from December 16, 1944 in Milan. There, a large parade was held in honor of Benito Mussolini visiting the city. After the parade, Mussolini paid a visit to Distacamento di Milano, or Milan Detachment, that had at least 2 M1542s. He climbed on the turret of the M1542 under the command of Vice Brigadier Donati, haranguing the gathered soldiers and people. Wehrmacht. The Germans managed to acquire, either by capturing or producing, over 100 M1542 tanks. The Italian equipment, including tanks, was mainly used to replace the older French captured vehicles which were operated in the Balkans fighting the partisan forces there. Some M1542 used by the Panzerabteilung 202 were used to defend the vital Belgrade-Zagreb railway line during mid-1944. During skirmishes against partisans, many M1542s were also damaged or lost by anti-tank gunfire. During the battle for Belgrade, there was an accident when a Soviet T-34 rammed an M1542 and completely turned it on its side. Panzerabteilung ZBV-12 was another unit stationed in Yugoslavia from 1941. At the beginning of March 1944, Panzerabteilung ZBV-12 was in the process of reorganization, and the older French tanks were slowly being replaced by Italian-built vehicles. By April 1944, there were some 42 M1542 tanks in use by this unit. Another unit that used the M1542 was the SS Panzerabteilung 105, which was part of the VSS Freiwilligen Gebirgskorps. It was involved in fighting Bosnian partisans during 1944. At the end of 1944, when the unit was recalled to Germany, it had 5 M1542 tanks in its inventory. While the unit fought the Soviets in the defense of Frankfurt, it is unknown if by that time it still possessed any M1542 tanks. The M1542 tanks employed by the Germans in Yugoslavia were plagued by a lack of spare parts, ammunition, and fuel. Many tanks were not used in combat as they needed constant maintenance and repairs, and too often this would be simply cannibalized for spare parts. Yugoslav Partisan Service. The Yugoslav Communist Resistance Movement managed to capture a number of M1542 tanks. Following the end of the war, the M1542s, together with other captured vehicles, was employed by the new Yugoslavian People's Army. Their use would be quite limited due to the general lack of spare parts and ammunition. Variants. Carro Centro Radio. The M1542 chassis was used for a modified command tank variant, Carro Centro Radio or radio tank. For the modification, the turret was removed. The superstructure's twin machine guns were sometimes replaced with 13mm heavy machine gun, and lastly, extra radio equipment was added. Semovente M1542 Anti-Aero. This was an experimental self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicle. While most parts of the tank, including the suspension and hull, were unchanged, it received an enlarged turret armed with 4 2cm Scotty cannons. Possibly 1 or 2 prototypes were built and their fate is not clear. M1542 with a Panzer 38T turret. The M1542 was also used as a field modification by replacing its original turret with one taken from a Panzer 38T. This vehicle is quite a mystery regarding who made it and why. Semovente M42-75-18 and M42M-75-34. Due to the general ineffectiveness of their tank designs, the Italians introduced a series of vehicles called Semovente. These used tank chassis starting from the M13 by replacing the superstructure and turret with an enclosed casemate and a 75-18mm gun. The M1542 chassis was also used in this manner. By the time of the Italian surrender in September 1943, around 200 vehicles were built. Under German supervision, an additional 55 vehicles were built with the materials available on hand. The Semovente, based on the M1542, was further improved by adding the longer 75-34 gun. By May 1943, some 60 vehicles would be completed by the Italians. An additional 80 new vehicles would be built by the Germans after the Italian armistice. In total, 13 M1542s have survived to this day. Only 3 are outside Italy. One of those is at the Musée des Blindés of Saumur, France. Another is exhibited in the Belgrade Military Museum in not a great condition. The last M1542 outside Italy is in a private collection in the San Marino Republic and is in running condition. In Italy, of the 10 vehicles that survived, 8 are conserved in military barracks around Italy. One is at the Caserma de' Carli of the 132nd Reggimento Cari in Condernos, Friuli, Venezia, Giulia. One is at the Museo Storico della Motorizzazione Militare in Cegnola, near Rome, and another one is in the Museo Storico Italiano della Guerra in Rovereto, northern Italy. The M1542 was built by the Italians as a makeshift solution to their need for a better tank design. While it offered some improvement over the various M1340 and M1441 series, by the time it was ready for service, it was already obsolete. Its armor and firepower were simply insufficient in comparison to the enemy tanks that would be used against. While less than 200 would be built, ironically, their use by the Italians was minimal at best. The Germans managed to get their hands on nearly all M1542s. These were used against the Yugoslav partisan in the Balkans. Their performance was limited due to many factors, including a lack of spare part and frequent breakdowns, which prevented many vehicles from being used in combat. They did achieve some success against poorly armed partisans who lacked proper anti-tank weapons. Once the Soviets started to closely support these fighters with modern tanks, the M1542 was unable to do much. In the end, the M1542 proved to be a quick solution to the Italian need for a proper tank, but it ultimately failed in this regard. And that's it for this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscription. You can find more information relating to this vehicle in the full article, which is linked in the description. If you like what we are doing and want to let us continue working on these videos, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be allocated to improving our articles and videos for you. Until next time, keep us in your sights.